My dad's been having fun with us this past week, more ways than I can tell you about in a short time. Although while we're waiting, I will tell you, he died on Friday, and if you want to know how my dad is that stubborn, he had a heart attack. My wife and I got to the hospital, and he was in VTAC. VTAC is where the heart is just sort of trying to work, but is not working. Are you back to poinsettias? Oh, you just had, you're doing it now. Is it me? Dad! Would you stop? I get it. You are so ornery. Bless his heart. Okay. You know what? That was me 3 minutes ago. It's catching up. Yeah. So we'll let it catch up. But he is so stubborn and so annoying. Oh, my goodness. We were kind of joking about that. So he died. And finally the VTAC, and it just went, and it's surreal, right? If you've been in that moment, and with some of you, I've been there as a pastor, and there's this moment you're like, it's finished, it's happened. And my wife is bawling, and I'm on one side, and she's on the other side, and then the doc does that to the neck. It says, okay, everything he's doing, some of those last breaths, this is all just his last reactions. He's not there, and he's not with us anymore. And at that moment, my dad's sitting there, he goes, and he looks at me, and he looks at Tara, and he goes, "What? You don't have to make such a fuss over me." And we're like, so we're there, and we look at the doc at the edge. Dr. Boston, I will never forget his face, and he goes, "Nope, I've never had that happen before. I've never seen that." I go, "Well, you don't know my dad. Because it's his way or the highway, and he is just that stubborn that he's going to die on his terms, not from that heart attack." And we're like, okay. He made it a couple more days, and so what I just joke is that on Sunday he passed away. And I said, leave it to a pastor to fall on Friday and to ascend on Sunday. I mean, it was a lot. I won't lie. We went through a couple of days. I can't thank my family for their support. And again, as I share with you guys, it was very appreciated. So, okay. It's a little behind Jenna. We'll see if it catches up with me. If it doesn't, we're going to do a conclusion today about this sermon series on marriage and family. Remember, we're talking about model and method. So if the only thing you get out of this is that we have to ascribe to a model. That's what Paul calls the law. You can't get rid of the law, because to get rid of the law is to just say that everybody's right on every issue. Well, we know how that works in our culture today. But then our problem is that we say, well, here's the model, and we don't like to talk about the model because what if I don't ascribe to that? My life doesn't live to that. You go, yes, that's guilt, and that's okay too. That's where you get to confession, and confession becomes redemption. And God, Romans 8:1, has redemptive work, and that's the method to restore us. And we're not going to be perfect families. We're ascribing to be better families. We're ascribing to work out our salvation with the people we know and love. And today we're going to highlight that in a very meaningful way. So let's do a quick review. First of all, we talked about the biblical model of marriage. That is with a husband and a wife. For this reason, a man will leave his mother and father and be united to his wife, and they'll become one flesh. What's that one flesh? What's that union for? To be co-creators with God. And we have children. Go therefore and multiply. But what was the importance of that? What does that really model? What does that most intimate relationship represent? Christ and his church. And then as Christ and his church, we are reproducing the kingdom of God through the children. So we all get to be children of God. We participate in the family of God, this unification of Christ and his church. That's the marriage. Now, I share with you that there's divorce. That breaks God's heart. But as we shared, that God also forgives. And if you don't allow the forgiveness to happen in families, we won't get to what we're going to talk about today, and that is blended families. That's a challenge, isn't it? Blended families get messy. Amen. They just get messy. Now, maybe you're not from a blended family, but you have. My wife and I, my parents. We're not divorced. When Tara and I got married, she came from a divorced family. I found that really interesting and challenging, trying to navigate how to work in with going to my father-in-law's house and then going to my mother-in-law's house, and how to divide that time and space. And you've got we're all siblings by the mom and dad, then you got step siblings, you got half siblings, and you get family gatherings together. It gets kind of mixed, right? That's even true when you get married, right? You bring in the in-laws. That's kind of a blended family. I've told you that my sister-in-law, when I was engaged, we're engaged. I've put a ring on her finger. We do family pictures. And she, at 16, looks at me and says, "You're not part of the family yet." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that was harsh." She don't want me in the family pictures. She's like, "We're not married yet." But then I have news for her. And we're still going strong. Sucker! Throwing shade at me at 16. How old your marriages work out? You want to see the family photos now? I'm still in it. You guys are like, you'd probably stay married just to stick it to her 30 years later. I'm glad my wife and I are still happily, wonderfully in love. But yes, if we weren't in love anymore, I might still stay strong. We're sticking it to your sister from 30 years ago. Blended families are hard, and there's one of the things that I offer in perspective. There's a couple things I counsel, so let me give you some practical advice. If you get divorced, you want to remarry, I do not encourage remarriages during children of an age between 10 and 18. I think it's very difficult for that segment. Some of you have done it, and you're like, "Yeah, it was really hard." It's really hard. Why? Because that season of a child becoming their adult, right, the teen years, very difficult for step siblings, step parents to come into that space. The studies, you can look it up, when they're young, they don't know. That 4 and 6-year-old tends to work out well. And then the empty nesters, as much as it might be a challenge for the older children to the adult children to accept their parents getting remarried, that tends to still be something that they can navigate. But it is hard. And then, of course, the studies also show, guess what the number one criteria is that is the highest above all other criteria for abuse in the home? Step-parents. Now, don't look around and be like, "Oh boy, who's the step-parents in here?" It's just a challenge. It's a challenge to make that oil and water merge, to connect, to fuse, and do it in a healthy manner. But that said, we can't avoid the reality that is we want to continue amidst the struggle to present the right family formula to allow ourselves to raise our kids and to raise them well. I'm going to give you a verse this morning that almost is counterintuitive to this. You're going to look at it and you're going to say, "But wait a second. You've been promoting and talking about this biological family, and now you're going to go off script with this spiritual awakening of what family really is all about." You're welcome to look up with me if you'd like, but I'm going to read out of Matthew chapter 12, 46 through 50. Someone told Jesus, "Your mother and your brothers are standing outside and they're wanting to speak to you." Now pause. When we get to the prodigal son story in Luke 15, the prodigal son comes home, the father throws this great banquet, rolls out the red carpet, forgives. We all love that story. That's the amazing grace, God the Father forgiving the prodigal son. And yet, what does the oldest son do? The oldest son leaves the party feeling sorry for himself. "You've never thrown a party for me and my friends. I've been faithful to you this whole time." And that pity party requires the father to leave the party. Now, just so you know, this is also shameful to the father. Both sons happen to be the prodigal sons. They both behave badly towards their father, towards their parents. Well, for the father to leave the house and the party is to be shaming the father. So this is what Jesus' mother and brothers are doing. They're outside, and essentially Jesus is starting his ministry, and it's creating a ruckus. It's drawing more attention to the family, and that's shaming them. They're like, "Hey, we're not sure we like what you're doing. We don't want the microscope on us. We don't want the attention to our family. Why can't you just be a carpenter and live out your life like everybody else?" And they go, "Hey, they're outside." And Jesus replies to his disciples, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Let me say that again. Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. If you're here this morning, and I still go back when Trevor said we put the fun in dysfunctional. Every one of us comes from dysfunction. If you want to know where you feel like you're part of a family, welcome to church. This is the ultimate blended family. These are the people who come to worship from all different walks of life. I shared with at the 8:30 service, Malia, how old are you now? Malia, she's got all kinds of opinions, and she shares them with me freely. How we should do things at the church. And I'm kind of like, okay, maybe, you can pipe down once in a while. I don't need a 16-year-old. But here's my point. She's 16 and she loves Jesus and she wants to talk and she wants to engage. And then I go to Joyce Best, who is a little older than 16. She's been here a little while. How long have you been a member of the church now, Joyce? 60? She's a long time. Been long. Members of the old church. How is it we can have Joyce and Malia both passionately involved? Is that wild? That is so special. So when somebody says, I don't know how to do this blended family thing, I don't know how to do this family thing, come to church. Jesus is saying, who is my mother? Who are my sisters? Who are my brothers? I want you to just, when you leave here, say, this is where we figure it out. And there's a really cool method we're going to conclude with as to why that matters. But let's dig in a little bit more. What Jesus is talking about is he's saying it's a little contrast to the biological family. And here's what happens. Our ideal scenario of marriage and family gets broken. And you wonder why it's broken. Well, there's 3 reasons that we break relationships. It's our sin, it's the sin of the other person, or it's the curse, what we call suffering. So my sin, other sins, and suffering. And what does that look like? Well, in marriage and in family, if it's my sin, I'm the one that's selfish and I'm vying for a divorce, or I'm the one that had the affair, or I'm the one that was abusive, or I'm the one that was neglecting our relationship. And that might extend to the kids, and I was the one that was neglecting the kids. I was a bad parent. Maybe I was the parent who supplanted the emotional relationship of the marriage through my children. And that sin, that insecurity, that's my doing. But you also know in relationships, it's the sin of the other person. They were the ones that presented the divorce. They're the ones that had the affair. They're the ones that neglected the marriage and relationship. You tried and they didn't buy in. And then families suffer from the greater cause that we can't explain, an unexpected death. 2 people that loved each other and somebody, they passed away. I've met with families that suffered a house fire. Nobody did it intentionally. It happened. It cost them everything. And you and I both try to explain that in our lives, and it cuts to the core. When you suffer the loss of a loved one unexpectedly, or you lose everything. Somebody loses their job and your income just shrinks overnight, and you're trying to understand. These are the things that happen with family. And what I would offer is that's where it helps for us to see outside of that biology and appreciate the spirituality. A spiritual family that comes alongside. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how powerful this is and why it's important. If you only think in terms of biology, you're the parent at the soccer game, and even as you might like the other players on the team, there's only one kid you're celebrating, right? And you don't like it when the other kids don't pass them the ball, and you don't like it when the ref gets mad. You don't like it when the coach gets mad at them. That's my kid, and that's the only person on the field that matters to me. But if you're going to grow as a parent, you're going to appreciate and have some tendencies towards the other children as if they were your own. And the coach is going to parent, presumably, all the kids on the team. That's coaching, right? Helping them become a better version of themselves. In the animal world, it's called alloparenting. They've actually seen whole species take on the parenting role of another species, a lioness that takes a fawn into her care. And you're thinking, how would you do that? Because the lioness overcomes their hunger with the maternal instinct, the motherhood. And here's the fawn without her mom, and I'm a mom, and you have this lioness, and isn't that what Jesus says, that will lay down with the lamb? How weird is that? It's because something more than our carnal instincts is going on. We often say blood is thicker than water. We say that incorrectly. The blood of what? The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It's a little different, isn't it? Truth be told, your biology is important. You have a responsibility to the people that you have decided to marry, to spend your life with. The children that you bring into the world, you have a responsibility to raise them. But if you want to know how to do it right or how to do it best, or when it doesn't work out, how to make it right, how to get back on track, I would tell you the blood of the covenant is the best place to start. Who is my mother? Who is my brother? These are my brothers and sisters. And the more I understand this family outside of biology, the more I understand my family. My dad was born February 3rd, 1942. It was kind of fun to go through memory lane yesterday. I talked to my aunt and uncle last week to share some of the stories of his childhood. But one that I really knew my whole life, because it always was so special to me, how he was very good friends with a man called, his name is Bill Harbeck. Bill was born the same day as my dad in the same hospital in Valparaiso, Indiana. It's amazing. They've been best friends their whole lives. In fact, Bill unfortunately passed away about a year ago, actually. They're striking opposites. Bill Harbeck, he lettered 12 letters at Valparaiso University. Take that for a second. Not one sport 4 times, 3 sports, freshman through senior, all 3 times. He lettered in track, he lettered in wrestling, and he lettered in cross country, all 4 years. My dad, once he got out of high school, never exercised again in his life. Bill Harbeck was still running at 80 years old. My dad put more ketchup on the fries, you know what I mean? I always joked, I never saw him eat a salad. I never saw him drink water. It was coffee in the morning, Diet Coke the rest of the day. And if I was totally honest, because you all know, and a lot of cigarettes. He just smoked a lot. Bill Harbeck got cancer and passed away. We couldn't believe he died before my dad, who was having health issues. And Dad took it really hard. Well, why was Bill such a part of Dad's life? In high school, I believe it was his dad passed away, and his mom became an alcoholic. Bill would come over, and my grandma, Donna, would invite him to come in and eat, and they would eat at the same meal. My dad has 2 younger siblings. Aunt Diane's 3 years younger, but my Uncle Denny is 11 years younger. So for my dad, they didn't have a lot of stories. They hung out and they had fun together, but all the stories of his childhood were with Bill. And his cousin, by the way, they were great friends too. But Dad would always tell me about he and Bill, and he and Bill, and he and Bill, and then college, and he and Bill. They told me that Bill Harbeck went to visit my dad when he came back and went to seminary up at Garrett in Chicago. 1968, there was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and my dad would tell me about how he and Bill drove his convertible with the top down on the sidewalks in Chicago because of the riots in the streets. Like, how wild is that? But did you hear what I say? He wasn't telling me that he was with Denny. He wasn't telling me he was with Aunt Di. He always had stories with Bill. What I'm offering you this morning is that the blood of the covenant is your family. Your family may put the fun in dysfunction, but trust me, and we're not perfect as a church. This is your family. And here's why it matters. You ready? How many of you have family functions, and when you leave them, you're like, I hope I never see them till next Thanksgiving? And you're okay with that because they're kind of messed up people, and you're like, I'm just not sure I can really be. How many of you, they have such different political opinions, and we get together. You know why you struggle in that relationship? It's usually because you've isolated yourself from experiencing those kinds of relationships, right? So you come to church, And what I just said about Joyce and Malia is you rub elbows with people who are just that weird and different. They're older, they're younger, they have different opinions. Welcome to church. Who is my mother? Who is my brother? And by you practicing what we do in church, it drives me crazy when I say small groups, get into small groups, have those discussions, and somebody will inevitably say, I don't know that I like small groups because there's inevitably somebody who's going to say something I don't like or agree with. And I go, yes. And if you don't have that, you're going to hate Thanksgiving or Christmas. Practice, practice, practice. Get with people who are different. Learn how to love them according to the blood of the covenant. And not just because it's biologically your responsibility. Now, can we pause for a second? How many of you as kids, you've said to your parents, I never got a choice. You brought me into this world and I didn't even get to decide. I know you want to look at your dad and tell him that. To be like, I didn't get a choice. You did it to me. That's true. It's true. Now look at your married partner and be like, but I chose you. It's pretty wild, isn't it? Paige is like, yeah. You guys suckered me. I didn't even get a vote. In this church family, we choose the relationships we're in. That matters so much. It wasn't forced upon you to decide you want to come to this church. It wasn't forced upon you to say, I want to accept Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. That is your choosing. And in that relationship, you continue to say, I keep choosing this relationship over and over again. That changes your outlook on other people around you in the world beside you. So let me share how this last verse comes to mind. This is one of the most powerful relationships in the Bible. You can look it up in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. You've heard me quote it 1,000 times. Ruth says to Naomi, now let's give some context. Naomi and her husband, they have 2 sons. There's a famine, so they go to Moab. While they're in Moab, they find wives for their sons, Orpah and Ruth. And while they're in Moab, their husband, Naomi's husband dies, and her 2 sons die. The mother-in-law is left with the 2 daughter-in-laws. They're of no blood relationship at all. And by the way, those 3 women, they didn't get to choose. It was mostly put upon them who they were going to marry. And now these 3 women are left to fend for themselves. Orpah eventually decides, I'm going to go back to my family in Moab. And Naomi looks at Ruth and says, you should do the same. I have nothing to give you. I have no security. Go back to your family. But Ruth says in Ruth 1:16, I hardly read it. This is the best verse. She says to Naomi, her mother-in-law, after they've lost all the men in their lives, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people are my people, and your God is my God. And may that God deal with me ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. Church, can I tell you the same as my dad loved Bill as a brother? I love my brother. Who are my brothers and sisters? Who came to the hospital? Who covered the gaps when I was broken? Who have been my mother, my father? Oh, church. This morning, would you keep that in mind? That you have laws that you want people to abide by, rules within the family structure, rules within your friends and the people. We have that system too. It's just not every person for themselves. But that comes with saying to the people you love, the blood of the covenant that is thicker than the water of the womb. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people are my people. I don't have a 3-point sermon. I don't have something to take with you to say, this is what I can do to make my family better. I'm just offering to you, is there going to be alloparenting in your life? Are there people you're going to run into? Or is there a way you can manage the holidays because you have a little bit of a softer spirit with the fact that somebody you'd never want to see again, you realize is always meant to be a part of your life? I'm going to invite the worship team to come up, and we're just going to close with a blessing. God says this blessing says, the sins of your parents to the third and fourth generation. In the Gospel of John, the Pharisees say, who sinned that this man was born blind? They want to attribute, and you know this, that whatever it is, the genetics of your parents is going to come to you, that there's suffering from the third and fourth generation. If there's abuse in your family, you feel it coming down to you. But then God says, but for the righteous, those who abide by God's word, in God's family, to the blessings to the thousands of generations. God intentionally turns it around and says, just be faithful to me, and I will give you family that will be a blessing for thousands of generations. That has been proven in the life of the church, some 2,000 years now. So welcome to the family.